I speak to you now in the name of God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Very often I like to begin our sermon together with maybe a little bit of a joke or some humor. Chloe, it's going to be good. It's worth it. So did you hear about the one about the guy that took the DNA test and found unexpected family? Yes, my nephew David and his wonderful wife Kathy and his daughter Mackenzie and his son Carter are with us this morning, and that just makes me happy. On top of that, we have a wonderful baptism by the couple that I sort of but didn't actually marry, but maybe kind of did on a mountain in Virginia, which is a whole nother story. But it's nice to have y'all here this morning. But our readings this morning seem rather unusual because somehow the idea of the incident with David and Bathsheba and the death of Uriah the Hittite somehow is intended to speak to the feeding of the multitudes, the loaves and fishes. And it seems like a very incompatible set of Holy Scriptures. It seems that way. But what we need to do is sort of examine the circumstances around the story of David and Bathsheba. Bathsheba, by the way, gets a very bad rap in popular culture. Bathsheba is not a person of questionable background or morals. Bathsheba is adhering to Torah. So let me kind of explain this. A few weeks ago, you heard the people of Israel in our readings for that Sunday, back at the beginning of the summer, asking for a king. We want a king essentially so that we will be like other nations. They had been ruled by judges up to that time. No, we want a king. We are the chosen, set-apart people of God, but we want to be like other people. If we have a king, then someone will be making hard decisions for us. If we have a king, we will have a central authority. If we have a king, so many of the responsibilities we take upon ourselves will be handled for us. And Samuel the prophet says, you don't know what you're asking, because a king will take advantage of you. A king will use you. A king will take a tenth of your flocks and your herds. A king will conscript your sons and put him into his armies to fight his battles, and he will take your daughters for his own pleasure. You do not want a king. You already have a king. That's the one who should rule you. But no, we want an earthly authority like other people. There seems to be, among many folks, a longing for authority, someone to set boundaries and rules and regulations outside of the ones set by God in our own hearts. And while I'm not going to get into political theory or anthropology, unless anybody really wants that, okay, there is a longing among many for authority. And so they say, yes, that is exactly what we want. Now, within Torah, within the body of Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, but specifically Leviticus and Deuteronomy, there are rules and regulations for how a king is supposed to rule. A king in his palace is supposed to be sitting upon his throne reading Torah at all times, reading Torah, so he will be more informed, better aware of God's will for God's people, so that he can make just pronouncements and judgments. It's about immersing himself in the life of the people and of God in order to make the right, appropriate, righteous, godly decisions. That's what a king is supposed to do, unless his army is in the field battling the enemies of Israel. And if that's the case, the king is supposed to be with his army at the forefront, because you do not put someone else's life at risk and keep yourself safe. You go into battle with them to show them that the king, who is supposed to be in right relationship with God, is there with you in the midst of conflict. Those are the things that a king is supposed to do. That's what Torah says. Now, where is David? David's gone for an evening stroll on the roof of his palace. Where is his army? His army is in the field to do warfare and battle. David is not sitting on his throne reading Torah. He's not poring over the 613 laws found in Deuteronomy and Leviticus saying, what is this about shellfish? No. No. David is strolling about, looking down into someone else's backyard. David, the king, David that we have such extraordinary respect for, David, and maybe this is about power corrupting, David is looking upon his general's wife. His general's wife, now his general is not a Jew. His general is a Hittite. And his wife, Bathsheba, is doing, though, what she is supposed to do according to Torah. Torah says that cleansing, ablutions, is actually a part of what is appropriate and right following a woman's cycle. Y'all can explain that to your kids after the service. She is actually about following Torah. She is doing what is right and good. And David, though, sees it another way. And what does he do? He sends his guard down, his guards, plural actually in the Hebrew, he sends them down to bring her to him. There is no way that this is romantic. This is not some sultry moment. This is coercive. The word rape is not used, but whenever power uses its power to bring another person into a relationship, it is coercive. It is not good. It is not right. That's just the way it is. Bathsheba is not at fault here. Uriah will certainly not be at fault. The person at fault is David. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't hold David in regard, that we don't lift up David as the ancestor, in fact, of Jesus. If anything, David is a model of the frailty of humanity when faced with temptation. And so Bathsheba conceives. Now Uriah, the Hittite, has been out doing what he's supposed to do. He is leading the king's army in battle, but David doesn't want to be caught in what he's done, so he summons Uriah back to come back to Jerusalem to be with his wife so there won't be anything suspicious. It'll be like, wow, Uriah's kid looks a lot like David. But no, Uriah was here, so it just must be a coincidence. Instead, Uriah, again, being faithful both to his wife and to his responsibilities, refuses to be with his wife in that way. David is desperate. He gets him drunk, hoping, but no. Uriah, the foreigner, is faithful. Uriah, who is not bound by Torah, is faithful. Uriah, the foreigner, the sojourner in the land, the immigrant, is the one in the story who is most faithful to the will of God. And so David does something particularly reprehensible. He writes a letter to Joab. Joab, I am sending this letter by way of Uriah back to you. In the heat of battle, make sure that Uriah is at the forefront, and then withdraw your men around him so Uriah will be killed. And he seals the letter, and he hands it to Uriah. And Uriah takes his death warrant in his own hands to give to Joab. Now think about that. David knew that he could trust Uriah so much that Uriah wouldn't look to see what the letter said. Uriah carries his death warrant to the man that will make sure that he dies because he is so good and so righteous and so loyal that he doesn't even look to see what he's reading or what will be read against him. David has handed Uriah death. And that is the connection to the feeding of the 5,000. Now, it's always easy for the priest to preach against the sins and dangers and the brokenness of the world, when in fact the sins and dangers and brokenness of the world are a part of the church too. We are as fallible as anyone you will meet. But we don't place our lives into the hands of death. What I mean by that is the story of the feeding of the 5,000, the multitudes. And so Jesus has been preaching and teaching and moving about the countryside. His fame has spread far and wide. He can find no peace because the people crowd around him. They want to be near him. They want to touch the hem of his garment. They want to hear his words. They want to be healed. They want to be made whole. And a vast multitude is in front of him. The numbers say 5,000 in all, but remember, they would not have counted women and children. Nothing personal, y'all. So perhaps it was 15,000. And they are gathered about him. And he says to Philip, Philip, how are we going to feed these folks? And Philip says, can't be done. Not by us. It takes 6 months' wages, and even that's not going to give enough for everybody. And Jesus says, well, what do we have? What do we have? Andrew brings a young boy to him and says, well, we got a couple of fish. We've got 5 barley loaves. Fish and barley loaves. All right, so this is the situation. Jesus has a little basket of bread, maybe a little basket with a couple of fish in it, and he's looking out upon 5,000 people. I wouldn't want to do it if I was just looking out on y'all. Because I know some of y'all really like fish, Scott. So he takes it and he blesses it and he breaks the bread. And in John, he says he distributes it. In Mark and Matthew and Luke, by the way, the only miracle found in all of the Gospels. So think about the significance of it. The only miracle found in all of the Gospels. It's given to the hands of the disciples to distribute, but it is spread among the people. And not only is everyone fed, there is more than enough. There is more than enough. There's an extraordinary abundance, and there is no hunger present. Everyone receives what they need from the hands of Christ. And that is the difference. And that is the connection. From the hands of the world, you will receive death and disappointment, always. From the hands of Christ, instead, we are given hope and possibility and love and life itself. Amen.